Hey, David.
Hi, Steve.
So, did you have any trouble getting in?
Nope.
Okay. So, it sounds like you've been looking into non-duality for a while. You have a pretty good sense of what's been talked about?
Um, Less and less these days, I guess. Because when I originally found it, it was Tony with
Yeah.
the Open Secret, which it just came up. I was reading probably close to like 20 self-help books a month
Okay.
for for like 2 summers, the last 2 summers. Um, and most of it was on my phone on Kindle, and then it came up as a suggested suggested book. And I'd
Okay.
never heard of non-duality. I was more into like, the self-help stuff kind of led more to like Buddhism kind of stuff and a lot of like the applied philosophy of Buddhism.
Okay.
Uh, and then it came up with Tony and I read that, and somewhere there was just like a light bulb, I guess, that kind of went off with that message, that kind of communication, where I was like, yeah, this is not offering anything really useful, but still seemed to be kind of an answer maybe to the question or to the feeling that I was having, that like something needed to happen or something needed to change, just because I was feeling so just confused out of nowhere too, because I never had like anxiety my whole life. I'm 28, I'm not that old, but it was like a new experience that started happening where I was just asking a lot, so very frequently asking like, what is this all about, and what is this being a person, and having to figure out, what to do with my time and my life, and what's the meaning and purpose of all of it, and then kind of going through all these books trying to find something, and then running into that message with Tony that kind of started, although I wasn't really hearing it, I guess, because I mean I read it and then I went back to other kind of Buddhist stuff, because I was like, all right, I see what Tony's saying and I see what this like non-duality message is saying, but to what I thought I wanted, it was not very helpful, because it was saying like, yep, this is it, whatever this is. And I was like, well, that sucks. So this can't be what I want. um
Well, if you've had a big dose of Tony, he's the one who started his message, talking his way. And so that's what's being talked about here. The answer, and the one who's looking for an answer, is really what's being talked about in one way or another. The one that's looking, the one that's trying, the one that's having difficulties. No answers are offered here. There is no answer, but what's seen when that you use the word thinker in your email, that activity, when that stops somehow, everything's different. When that stops, there are no more problems, because there's no one there to have problems. So that is that's what all the talking, all the messaging, all the pointing is about, is that you, or in this case, that me, that identity that seems so real to the one, to the you. It seems so real to that you. It's all that you knows. The you actually created it without even knowing what was happening. And then once it was there, it created itself. Once it was there, it just embellished, continually embellished itself in terms of what it thought was its life. So when speakers talk about what it's like not being a you, that's where all this kind of unusual wordiness comes from. Because what is seen when there's no longer a you is beyond expression. It's beyond understanding. It's beyond words. And that can be talked about over and over in thousands of different directions, but it will never be understood by you, by any you, anywhere. The you is not capable of understanding this. What happens when there is no longer a you, there's just this, whatever you want to call it, this life, this infinite stuff that's all beyond description. It's totally there, and yet you hear it's not there. Stuff like that. It's apparently there. That's Tony's word.
Yeah.
But none of it can be seen, experienced, felt, lived by you, by a you. And yet it's always there. It's always been there. It will always be there in the way that it's there forever. So what's constantly being referred to is that you. Either that you is there or it's not. For most people, it's totally there. And then what we talk about here doesn't make any sense to them. It sounds, to many people, it sounds crazy. Or if people are spiritually seeking, they're spiritual seekers, they've heard a lot of the words before. But if they're still seeking, there's still a you there, seeking. So there's no practice, there's no method, there's no teaching, there's no student. There's just a pointing or a referring or a intimation or that there is something else. hugely different. And then once it's seen as, hey, this is all the same neighborhood. You know, this still lives in the same neighborhood. The houses didn't disappear. All the same plants, maybe they grew, but maybe they got trimmed. Same numbers on the houses. And at the same time, it's different. And it can't be explained. So this is a fan of science, especially cosmology or astronomy or quantum physics, stuff like that. Because much of that science really is unexplainable. So science is found, it's found in its own way the apparent nature of everything. Maybe explained by particle physics and the way that energy forms atoms and whatnot. So particle physics says basically every solid thing is empty. But we can't put our finger through it. I can't put my finger through the desk here because of electromagnetic forces. I don't fall through the street when I walk, but the street really isn't solid. There are like huge distances between the nucleus of an atom and the first electron or the first electron field. So it's just interesting that science has stumbled onto that kind of mystery that's being talked about here in this way. So how does David feel about this you stuff?
Well, I've probably been listening to this communication through, first through Tony and then Kenneth, if you've heard of him, and Frank McCaughey.
Okay.
And they seemed kind of the most clear in a way to me. And like Emerson sometimes, but I feel like there's just a lot of concepts thrown around sometimes in his meetings, and I feel like I try to like figure out a lot of the stuff that he talks about versus like with like Jim Newman or Kenneth or Frank, there's really no offering of any kind for like, there's no concept to try to like undo another concept. It just says like all understanding is irrelevant when it comes to this.
Yeah.
And so that is like, has been like frustrating, but also kind of freeing in a way, because it's like, well, then that's good because it means I don't have to figure something out. There isn't like a puzzle that needs to be solved to get to somewhere else called not me. And then I've had what I guess in the lexicon of this community is like glimpses.
Yeah,
Although
you have.
I'm not totally sure. Because basically, the first one that I remember actually happened when I was a kid.
Okay.
And I was, the only way I've tried to ever describe it is like this kind of overwhelming intimacy.
Intimacy.
Yeah, where it just felt like breathing was like the first thing that was noticed. It's like the breathing is being done like it's this automatic thing that's happening that I'm not actually doing. And then that was like when I was a real little kid, I would notice that and have no idea what that was about. Didn't really think about it too much either. And then it didn't happen again until like 2 years ago, after starting to listen to Tony. And then I remember it happened, and I was just like laying in bed, and then it was like just very intimate again, just this sense of intimacy, of closeness. But this time it was more the thoughts. It was, it's hard to say that, like, it was pretty clear that no one was doing thinking, that like thoughts were the same thing as breathing, that they're just this natural functioning, and that the only evidence of like a me aware of the thoughts was just another automatic thought that was coming up. So there was like kind of this lostness and this question of like, well, where am I? Where is the solid thing that's witnessing all of this? And at the same time, this kind of knowing, in a sense, that there isn't anyone at the center of all of this. It's all just happening. That it's just this automatic thinking, breathing, this like lightness to all of that stuff too, and like very intimate, kind of energetic feeling to all of it. And it would happen for maybe like 20 or 30 seconds, and then it would seem like some realness came back to like the thoughts, and it felt like the thoughts could be directed again. And then there was just this bewilderment about like, well, that just showed like me, that there wasn't a me doing any of this, but yet that feeling of me-ness or here-ness would seem to come back. And then over the last 3 weeks, it's been happening almost every night before I go to sleep.
Wow.
This just this feeling again of that intimacy and of the thoughts just showing up with no director, no one pulling the strings for it, and then just kind of drifting from there into, sleeping, and then waking up and being like, what the hell? Like this, like there seems to be like a wanting for that experience to be permanent, that like disappearance to be permanent. And then still knowing somewhere that like, even saying this right now, that I want that to be permanent, is like an automatic happening, if that's trackable at all. It's hard to talk about it because it just doesn't, it's like the words don't really stick to it, because it's showing up like as the words and as the questioning, as the seeking, like all of that seems to be somewhere it's felt and heard to be the case, but yet there's still that movement towards wanting to hold on to that. And
Well, David, sounds like you're talking about what we're talking about.
yeah, I think that's why when I first heard Tony, something, I didn't equate the experiences, like the glimpses, to what he was talking about at the time. But then as they became more frequent, I was like, oh, I think this is what they're talking about, that they don't have words for, because I don't know how to explain this to my friends, or like I've only told one other person in my whole life about these experiences, because they just seem like crazy talk to most people. But
Yeah.
yet I don't like feel crazy saying it, not just mostly because I know of this community, and I'm like, all right, this is something that happens, and it
Yes.
is everything already. But yeah, that so I guess the most feeling about me is that there's just a discomfort, there's a constant angst about feeling here, and being witness to things. And there's a lot of spiritual practice in the past with meditation and awareness of awareness and that whole rabbit hole of practice. So
Yes.
there's like frustration where it feels like, oh man, like I feel like I'm here, I feel like I'm witnessing thoughts and ideas and actions and my problems, the drama of, oh, do I move to Hawaii because I like the ocean, or do I stay in Idaho for a girlfriend? Like all of that seems very heavy and real. And then there's the frustration of knowing that, like, well, when I have these glimpses, all of that just seems so like irrelevant in a way. Like it still feels like it's happening by itself, but it doesn't feel like the responsibility and the weight, the pressure of having to make those decisions doesn't feel real during like the glimpse experiences. So there's the desire for that feeling or lack of feeling.
Well, something's happening for you, David, but not for you. Something's definitely happening. And it'll continue happening until you're not there anymore. It'll just be this. There won't be any more glimpses. They'll just be this. The glimpses keep returning to David, to you, from glimpse to you, from glimpse to you, back and forth, until they stop, until it's just this, till it's just life living the body, until it's just all this.
Yeah.
And in that glimpsing, the you will do whatever it does. Whatever it ends up doing, it'll do it in whatever form it feels it needs to do it, until it doesn't do it anymore. Here, there was a point where the you just gave up. It just gave up on everything. There was lots of glimpses, same kind of process, in and out, in and out. The you was doing it all until it wasn't, until it just didn't return one day. And there was nobody here to miss it. Nobody here to wish it bon voyage, but nobody here to miss it either.
Yeah. I guess it's the back and forth is kind of the most disruptive.
Well,
It's just
have you done any like weekend meetings with anybody?
no, they don't seem to show up in this area. I mean, I haven't traveled outside of like the country. I'm definitely interested in that, but being
They,
in
they,
Idaho, I don't really know a community here that has them, or anything that close either.
well, you can do them on Zoom.
Oh yeah.
Have you done any of those?
Yeah, I've gone to quite a few Zoom meetings.
Okay.
And I guess I don't often hear people talk about glimpses in those. It's a lot of like, I guess I get the sense that it's people wanting some sort of like applied non-duality. They'll have like questions about I don't know, different thoughts or ideas. And sometimes I ask something if it really seems to come up, but I don't really have like many questions in that form anymore, because I guess there's just a scene that like, well, knowing stuff just seems to be pretty stale to me. It's like I don't feel like I need more knowledge in in the sense that a lot of the meetings seem to be about, like, kind of dissolving ideas, which is, I mean, I still listen to it constantly. I mean, I listen to the YouTube recordings of meetings. I do
Okay,
massage therapy. I usually listen. I'll have like one earbud in and I'm listening to it
okay,
like all day.
okay.
So there's something that still enjoys listening, but and I do go to meetings when I can. But there's I guess they can be disheartening in a way, because it's often said that like the waiting, there can be like, the feeling of kind of what I'm doing, which is like waiting for this disappearance, and that they often say that like, well, that it doesn't actually happen. So then there's this like back and forth of like, well, then maybe this feeling of me and being here, like maybe this is, the best to hope for. Like it seems like it can't be helped but to hope for something.
Well, yes, yes, and who's hoping?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment it feels like a me, like David is hoping for that, you know. And then when
So,
the glimpse happens, it's like it's clear and obvious that that's no one doing it. But then it's like, how could it be seen and then unseen so many times? That's like the frustrating thing. It's like, man, it's if it's obvious and then it comes back, it seems not obvious. It seems totally real again.
well, you've heard of Tony's glimpses, right?
I don't remember. It's been a
Yeah,
while.
he was a big glimpser. Yeah, he tells stories about glimpsing. Uh, I don't know if he used the word disappearing, but maybe, I don't remember. Anyway, so this was a glimpser, and I don't know if you read or you've seen the video where this talks about the experience, but I just did or Steve just did a retreat with Emerson, simply because Steve felt it was time to ask a question. What is this disappearing all about? That's the first time I ever talked to anybody about it. And then Steve just went through the weekend meeting. And a month later, he did another weekend meeting, a longer one. And that for this, that seemed to have like a tiring, a wearing out kind of feeling
Hmm.
for me, for the me, until there was constant glimpsing, and then Steve didn't come back. And the glimpses stopped. The glimpses stop, and then it's all what is. The glimpses are not, at least here, they're not quite this. Because once the me is gone and there's only this, it seems a little bit different from a glimpse. Because with a glimpse, there's still a lot of you, a lot of you involved. In fact, it's you having glimpses. Basically, it was me having glimpses or Steve having glimpses until there was no more Steve. And there were no more glimpses. It was just everything. All of this and more. And the thing about it is, Steve isn't missed at all. I'm not missed at all. The I is not missed. The me is not missed. The we, the us, the our, none of it is missed. None of it is necessary. None of it belongs. None of it belongs here in this. That's strongly seen. So things are happening. Energy is changing. And the you has a way of doing what it does, however it does it, until it just doesn't. Until it just doesn't, for whatever apparently it just leaves, checks out, no longer there, nobody misses it.
Yeah, that's one thing that's been pretty obvious is that there's even nothing that like brings on a glimpse. Like it's totally random.
Otherwise, who would bring it on?
Yeah.
Yes, it has absolutely nothing to do with you. The glimpsing has nothing to do with you, even though it's you that's doing it. Even though it's you that's having the glimpse, it has nothing to do with you. Nothing to do with any form of you. So we, like the word thinker was mentioned simply because thoughts are talked about. Thoughts are talked about. And then it's seen that thoughts basically think themselves. And they can think themselves in terms of feeling like a thinker. So all these different kind of forms of you, of basically the separate David, come up. They just come up and they dissipate. They come up and they dissipate. All of that activity is basically not even there. You know how it's said that there never was a you? That the you is already not there. All these different ways of saying there's no you, and there never was, and there never will be. And yet somehow this thought world continues thinking its world until it just one day it's just not there. And then it's seen that way. Then what is just is. And then it's what is being or doing or seeing what is. And it sees that. It just sees all that. There's still memories of David, what David did or didn't do, or there's still that stuff, but there's no longer David Smith. There's just this being this way.
Yeah.
And then it can be seen that way. So whatever hesitation or concern or desire or impatience or fear, whatever that you is focusing on, it's not even there. It can never understand that. And it can never happen to it to not be there. Even though at some point it's not there, it's not happening to it. It didn't do it. It's not doing it. So it'll just keep churning itself. At some point, since it's not getting anywhere, there's some who say that the you doesn't really want to be you anyway. It's a whole lot of work.
Yeah.
Endless work. And there are moments when it's not there for whatever reason. There are moments when it's just not there. But as soon as it sees it's not there, it quickly jumps back in the driver's seat. So nothing's being lost. There's nothing to lose. There's no one to lose anything and nothing to lose for that you. What ends up being seen is it's just a wondrously wonderful wordless undescribableness. It's always there. It lacks nothing. It needs nothing. It's perfect in its imperfection. So that's just what is seen. When it happens. It's seen when it's seen. So, how does all this sound?
Clarifying to some degree. I mean, I haven't talked to any like speaker about the like glimpses and those
Yeah.
experiences before. So I never really had an idea if that was sort of similar. I had a feeling that they weren't the same, and it sounds like from what you're saying, like it's not quite the same because there is still, even like during the glimpse, there's a lot of I mean, at first there's just like a wonder, and then there's pretty quickly like, now where am I in this? And then I guess because of the pattern of thoughts lately with non-duality, there's like a like, all right, well, can I recognize that there's no one here now? And it's like pretty quick. There's like what seems like a me looking for itself in the glimpse. And
Yeah.
even that is seen as automatic, but it's still, there still is like a flavor of meanness to the whole thing while still being totally other in a way. So,
Yes.
so yeah, it makes sense that there's, I mean, because it doesn't feel like a loss of anything when those glimpses are being had, but then there does feel like some weight that comes back after, which is like can't be really understood, I guess. Like when I try to understand it, it's like it's pretty clear that nothing disappears in those glimpses, but then there is like a sense of something coming back. So I guess yeah, it is yeah, what you're saying rings something, some bell somewhere. Seems like that makes, I mean, it makes sense in a way, but yeah.
Well, you're aware, you're the you that thinks it's talking to Steve or talking now, that thinks it's having this experience with glimpsing, is seeing at each step where it's a you again, that perhaps it's only an awareness, then it thinks a thought, then it gets an emotion, then it thinks some more. So it's all of it is the you that's contemplating its glimpsing until it's not there, even as an awareness, even as a sense of awareness, even as a like a location, a sense of location. The you has all these, it has built up this life that's filled with all of its own self-description and its own feelings and sensations, and it's all a package. So it will show itself in all those different forms until one day it's just not there.
Yeah.
And it seems that that's the way the energy's headed there for David.
Yeah. This is tiring.
Well, it is it's life disrupting. At least that happened here for like a year. Now, even now, it's still, you know, a lot of other things have changed. And yet, this would never do anything different. This would never go back to Steve being Steve again. It would just be no interest. There's no interest in that. It doesn't go anywhere. There's still a lot of interest in stuff like talking like this. There's an interest. There's still an interest in science, whatnot, but things have definitely changed. And at the same time, everything's fine. There's something that comes. There's something that comes with this. This brings its own everything with it. It's not like a fish out of water, something like that, you know. It's more of an embrace. This seems to embrace itself. And in a sense, support itself somehow. There is no fear. There's no one to be afraid, and there's nothing to be afraid of. And at the same time, things are the same and things are different.
Yeah. Yeah, there has been fear. No, you mentioned it. There are like, seems like waves. Sometimes in meetings, when I hear certain people, just like certain sentences, sometimes just like I'll start just feeling like sick almost.
Okay.
But it's just like this intense kind of fear that like this is really talking about like death in a sense of like what you were saying earlier. It's like it's not this like me is like not necessary. It's not, it's like out of place is what it feels like. But then there's a fear of that not being there as well. And like I guess sometimes after a glimpse there'll be like some fear because it's like, man, that's, if that's what it's like without a me, you know, the disorientation of like a glimpse but then it's only the me that comes back that's afraid of that too. So
Exactly.
yeah.
If it's all until it's gone, everything that's happening in a sense is you, is the you. Even when it's just, a little teeny little pimple of a you. It's the one that's doing it. Till it's not there. And it only takes a little pimple of a you to not see. Just a little smudge somewhere could be enough. It's enough to not see. As soon as they're seeing, as soon as there's only seeing, that then the you is gone. It's like a knife cut. It's there and it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, what to say?
So this still feels that what happened to no one here is just fine. And the process that started with a desire just to know, a desire for an explanation for glimpses or for disappearing, turned into for the you, that desire was a you desire. That desire turned into an effort on the part of this you to no longer be you, or to no longer be a you, to no longer be.
Yeah, here too. It's been trying to, I mean, that's what it feels like with like trying to understand, the
Yeah.
concepts around the message. It's like that it feels like an effort to disappear, but it's me trying to disappear.
And until you look at something and all of a sudden you're not there. Yeah, this used to have glimpses that like just the you would attempt to create a glimpse, but what really happened was a tree would come into view, and somehow looking at the needles of the pine tree, Steve wasn't there anymore. Or there was one glimpse where Steve was in the bathroom finishing his business and he just looked at at his lap and the wrinkles of his pants, and he was gone for the rest of the day, stuff like that. So the you thought it was the one doing it, but it really wasn't. You thought it was the one doing it and experiencing it, but it really wasn't. It's the you is not capable of doing that. It's limited. It's not, first of all, it's not there. It's really not there. But all that it does keeps it a you. Everything that it does, even the little pimple, keeps it operating as a you, keeps it a real you. That's all it knows how to do, is to perpetuate its sense of reality. And that's what keeps everyone stuck in you land.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any other questions?
No, I think that's yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, I just mostly wanted to bring up that well, the feeling of glimpses, because I haven't talked to anybody about them before. So I just recently saw your video with Kenny. You
Yeah,
guys talking to each other, and
yeah,
so I hadn't. I think I might have seen you in an Emerson weekend like a
yeah,
year ago, because I do remember your face, but then
yeah,
I saw that you were talking to Kenny, and I was
yeah,
like, I don't know, something just the way that you phrase it, I just felt like it was pretty clear. And when you talked about the fish and like a
yeah.
school of fish, because I was just in Hawaii and
Oh,
I was
yeah,
swimming, and like the first 10 feet were really murky, and I dove down a little deeper, free diving, and suddenly I was inside a school of fish. And it
yeah,
was one of the coolest things that I've ever experienced, and came up back to like the surface, and there was like this disbelief almost. So I was like, did that just happen? Like there was just a very dreamlike. I think it's because like I wasn't there when I was like in the school of fish. It seemed like, because I got to the surface and it seemed like that didn't even just happen. It was like there was a trying to remember it and trying to piece together the beauty and the awe of it, but it's like there was something, I just like couldn't grip it again after
yeah,
that. And then heard you talking about thoughts kind of being like that, where it can seem so convincing that there's like something orchestrating it, but really that's just like, I guess in my own words, it's like the movement of the fish or of thoughts is like, it is the same movement of like the ocean. It's not separate. There's not a separate thing that's doing it. And something about that experience, and then hearing your words about it, made me want to talk to you about the glimpses, because I've been thinking of it in that way, that like even all the erratic thoughts and the trying to figure it out and trying to see it and all that stuff, at some points feels like that's just a school of fish that's just moving, going every which way. And but yeah, still to that little piece of awareness that's trying to, or is seeing that, but yeah.
well, um, that thinker, that you may just start getting tired of doing what it's doing.
I thought I already was tired. And then it reboots every day. It's like, all right, let's another video, another thing. Let's just get to the
Well-
bottom of this. And it's just oh God, I'm so sick of it.
It may, you know what you're saying, the words you're using. I'm just so sick of it. So that's you saying it's sick of whatever it's doing. So that may just continue. And in a sense, the you ends up talking itself out of being. In its own way, you know, it's different for everyone. All the yous are different, and at the same time, they're all the same. They all do the same thing differently.
Yeah.
So that you may just get sick of doing what it does.
Yeah.
They get sick of the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see what happens, I guess. Or I won't.
Well, if you like, we can talk again, whatever you feel. Do you have any problems with having this published?
No?
Okay, that may happen. The work here is basically by donation. So donations are appreciated, whatever works for you or doesn't. But if you need to, we can talk. If you feel talking to anybody else or doing another retreat of some kind would be useful, that may be helpful, maybe not. What should I say? What should be said here? It's happening. Okay. All that'll be said is it's happening. Whatever's happening is happening. So it'll go the way that it does. If something is confusing or troubling or something, let me know and we can talk again.
All right. Appreciate your time.
Okay, David.
Thanks, Steve.
Later.
See ya.